Well, welcome everyone to my next deep dive. Today we have with us Brian McCarthy, and we're going to be talking about specialty wall finishes. Brian is a master designer. As many of you might know, he was a former partner at the legendary firm Parrish-Hadley, and then he went on to found his own firm in 1992, and he has done projects all over the world, like these incredible, gorgeous, immaculate, spectacular projects. So we're very lucky to have him with us today. He's going to talk us through his design process and why specialty wall finishes, and he has a different way of talking about specialty wall finishes, which he will talk about in a few minutes. And Brian is also a member of the AD100, the Elle Decor A list, and he's been featured in just about every magazine there is to be featured in. And last year, he received the Albert Hadley Lifetime Achievement Award through the New York School of Interior Design. So welcome, Brian. It's so nice
to have you
on this very, very snowy day in New York, which I'm kind of loving. So Brian, tell us a little bit about how you decided to become a designer, and just how you got to where you are today.
Well, I have to say it was a little bit process of elimination. You know, when I was younger, I did not imagine being in this industry at all. I grew up wanting to be on the back of a horse and competing, and had dreams of Olympics and all of that nonsense. And that was not meant to be. And because art was always my second love, I fell back on that and developed a portfolio and applied to several schools, and I got accepted to Pratt. And that sort of paved the way to ultimately getting the job with Albert Hadley and Parrish-Hadley. And, you know, it's just been a love affair. I can't imagine my life any other way than the way it's been. And, you know, I was really incredibly lucky, you know, to find myself on this incredible journey, you know, doing this, all this, you know, 37 years later. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And how did you get your foot in the door at Parrish-Hadley?
Through a carpet company in the D&D building. You know, as students, with all the projects that we had, you know, I'd be in the D&D on a regular basis getting samples of things. And there was a woman that worked at Harmony Carpet by the name of Fran. I cannot remember her last name. And she knew that Albert was looking for an assistant. And that was initially how it happened. But actually, there's an interesting sort of backstory to that, which was my senior year, I had gotten a job with another decorator whose name will remain anonymous. And on the day that I presented my thesis, the phone rang and I answered it, and I was all excited. I'd had this amazing presentation. And he said, you know, "Hi, it's X. I'm afraid I couldn't wait any longer. And you know, you don't have a job." So I went from having accepted a job in April to, in the beginning of June, suddenly having no job. But, you know, that was my golden ticket to my life. And thank God it went down that way. Yeah. So, you know, I'm a firm believer in when it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's definitely true. Well, I've had, as a magazine editor over the years, I've had the privilege of publishing your work. And one of the things that I've always noticed about it is how you treat walls. It's almost like you almost treat them like art. Can you talk to us about the importance of walls? Why walls? You know, why all the attention to walls?
Well, I actually refer to it as backgrounds. And I refer to it as backgrounds because the finishes really become a part of the architecture. For me, I want every project to have a realness and an authenticity to it. So there has to be a connection between the finishes and the architecture. So that's why I prefer to refer to it as backgrounds. And there's so many ways to look at backgrounds and how you resolve them. And whether it's actually the wall, whether it's the trim, whether it's a ceiling, whether it's a floor, there's so many different forms of treatment that contribute in a way to make the whole. So it kind of runs the gamut. And obviously then again, it depends upon the architectural details, the style of the house, all of these other, or apartment, all these other components.
Well, you kind of treat them like art themselves, right? I mean, it's almost like you could almost not put art on the walls because they're so artful.
Well, I do get a little carried away. You know what it is? We have amazing artisans that we work with, and we can kind of, within reason, we can dream up just about anything. Because I can be inspired by historical things, contemporary things, buy a piece of art, buy a piece of glass, buy anything really, and then try to translate that depending upon what the situation is. And, you need a client that's going to, go along with the program and say, I'm willing to invest in the backgrounds. What I also always, urge my clients to do is get the backgrounds right. The decorating, we can always come back and we can add and we can do, and you can hang art, but the backgrounds become the foundation for everything. So that's another reason why it's very, very important to me, and I really, that, as you said, that really is the artistry for me. In addition to then obviously coming in with all the flourishes and all the other things that we do.
Yeah. So do you consider floors backgrounds also?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Oh, it's really interesting. And is that where you generally start your job?
Well, I look at a project, I'm sure there will be a photograph of one of the projects that I'm going to reference in this conversation, which is, for this, it was a house in Southampton. And I knew that I wanted the nucleus of the house to be the central color story. And then everything really kind of spread from that out. And so the way the decoration kind of unfolded, or the way the finishes began to unfold, was from this central point. And, it made me think about color in very different ways. It made me think about the interaction of art against the walls in different ways. So all of that can play into a decision, whether you want it to be a shiny surface, whether you want it to be a matte surface, whether it's a textured surface. I just, in concept, even before necessarily thinking of a color, I try to lay it out that way so that I already have an idea in my head, sort of the direction that I want to move it in. But the other thing that plays into it at that point would also be carpets or rugs. Mm-hmm. They really do lay the groundwork, no pun intended, but they really do create another form of foundation for a room, in terms of, is it going to be something that's introducing color and pattern, and where does that lead you to? So there are a lot of different components. And of course, most importantly is client driven, is, really about what they want, what they love, what colors they love, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Light plays into it as well.
Yeah. Well, like so many of us, I've been pulling my place together during COVID, and I ordered a rug from PFM, and I was just blown away by how it transformed the room. I mean, it was a white on white, rug, but it was like a new room automatically. Yep. The carpet went down, and everything felt pulled together and posh and nice, and it's really incredible. So I get what you're saying. So I would imagine that these backgrounds often cost as much as the furnishings and accessories in a room, maybe even more. How do you convince your clients to go for it?
Well, we will break down the costs of a room. And well, let me back up for a second and say, for instance, a project in New York right now, we're doing carved plaster panels, which are inset into the walls. It's sort of, the inspiration is Italian modernist. And so, a way for me to rationalize this for the client is to say, no art is required. This really does become the art, for the space. And so that can play into it as well. And, I like editing. I mean, I'd say one of the great things that I learned from Albert Hadley is, is really, when to take the pencil or the brush off the page, off the canvas. Mm-hmm. And, that's also something that I think about, how that's going to sort of factor into it. And again, it's a question of client, and how much the artistry of that process is important to them, because we're starting right now an apartment for gallerists in New York. And, you know, it's essentially going to be a white background, and it's going to be super simple. And the art is really going to be, you know, what makes the backgrounds rather than what I would normally do. And that's exciting in its own right.
So are you using paint? Like
Yes.
just plain paint?
Yes.
Can't wait to see that. Okay.
Very stripped down.
Uh-huh. Well, you do have a wonderful way of editing your work. There's such strength to it, and everything really counts. I've always admired that. All right, so you said you have a whole group of craftsmen that you work with. Was it hard to find them? And do you feel like it's a dying art? Like, are there new people coming up?
I think there are always new people coming up. You know, there's, I'm gonna reference Europe right now. We work with a great workshop, Marigay. And, you know, they have almost an apprenticeship of younger people that come up through the ranks and really learn from the masters in the business. And, you know, I have not found in 25 years working in Europe and also working in this country, there are always more people that are, you know, taking it up and really loving it. So that has not been a problem at all.
That's great. That's really great. So someone asked if there are any books that you recommend where they can learn about finishes.
Oh boy, that's a hard one. I mean, I'm all about books, and it could be, you know, again, it can be historical, it can be architectural, it can be art, you know, about art. I'm always looking for new ideas, and there is no go-to for that. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I'm a bookophile, so I'm surrounded. I just rearranged all the books in the office 2 weeks ago to try to make space for new books, because I'm constantly adding to our library, which we're all in all the time.
Well,
so it's a great resource.
You know what your new book is going to be about. I forgot to mention that you're an author, by the way. Brian has 2 books. He has one called Luminous Interiors. That's about his work. And then the other one is Paris Hadley Tree of Life, which basically documents all the people whoever worked for Paris Hadley, right? Which is a marvelous.
Yes.
Book. They're both beautiful, but maybe there's an idea there. All right, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to launch into your slides. So not everyone has clients who can afford, you know, custom backgrounds. So what would you recommend for somebody who, you know, can't splurge on that?
You know, there's nothing more beautiful than a brushed out painted finish. It's to me, a beautiful brushed out finish is as yummy delicious as any other finish. So it also is not about it necessarily having to be some specialty finish. You know, you can achieve great beauty in the most simple way. So don't be put off.
A brush finish is a hand brushed one as opposed to a roller, using a roller. Okay.
And you can roll on and then brush out. I mean, that's typically what they do. Then it's really a question of the quality of the paint. So that's the other thing I would say. It's important to have a really good quality of paint, because you'll get, I mean, for instance, I'll reference Pharaoh and Ball, and one of the trim colors that I go to all the time is their pointing white. But the quality, and you know, you get all these painters that are trying to match Pharaoh and Ball colors, which you really can't do, number one. Number two, the way the paint lays up and the way it softens and flattens out, you get a surface to it that is unlike anything else. So, you know, that has its own great beauty in it on its own.
So what do you get from a brush finish that you wouldn't get from a roller finish?
A silkiness, and you don't get the texture. So, you know, for me, the roller always leaves, even if you do a very fine roller, it's always going to leave a texture to the surface. And that could be a deliberate thing too. You could say, I want that slightly textured, you know, feeling to it. That's not generally my thing. You know, I don't like that. I love seeing a little bit of the hand. And when you do the brushed out, you get the hand. I mean, it's a little bit the argument of, do you want pre-finished, you know, painted cabinets versus hand painted? I always want hand painted, regardless.
Okay.
You know, unless it's a very slick modern kitchen. But in general, I love the sensibility that you get from the brushed out finish.
Right. So it's very subtle, but it
Yeah.
does make a difference.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a few time and we can go back to our conversation. This may not happen to you, Brian, but what do you do if you have a client that does not have access to great art or does not have the budget for your foundational walls? Where's the happy medium? I guess that's the paint. So we answered that question. Do you ever use wallpapers?
Oh yeah, love wallpapers.
Oh.
And yeah, and I think there are some wonderful papers that even have a kind of painted quality to them. I also love grass cloth, and you can get, beautiful colors in grass cloth. You can get prints. They're very interesting alternatives to decorative paint finishes that you can find.
And just to make a plug for Schumacher, we do have the most beautiful textured wall coverings. We have these gesso ones and painted linen and really nice ones.
Yep.
But that's enough about us.
Okay. Well, let me also just say too that we do a lot of fabrics on the walls, and we fab back it so it goes up just like a wallpaper, but you get the luxuriousness and the feeling of the fabric, which is beautiful. And so that's another great alternative to a decorative finish.
So you paper back it with fabric, you back it with fabric, not paper? Yeah.
Okay. Well, or it can be paper backed. It really depends upon the fabric. And if it's a print with a big repeat, you need to keep some stretch to try to line up and match. So you just have to be careful about that. But they'll advise too, depending upon what it is.
Yeah. Okay, good. Please share some practical sales advice for getting clients to turn the needle.
Turn the needle to doing something more artistic?
Yeah.
Reference, show images. I'm such a believer in, if you can get a sample of something to put in front of them, and show them an option, and really make the case for why it makes the difference. And to go back to, they're not big art collectors, but the quality of the background is really going to be transformational in the room, then I think that's a point. And I think it's a question of culture. It's a question of if it's a younger client or a newer client that doesn't have the reference of having done a lot of decoration in their life, then they need to be educated. So, that's another part of what I do that I love, which is making those introductions. And I love for them to meet the people that we work with too, because I think very often the personalities that can create a bond in and of itself. And these decorative artists that we work with become part of these clients' families to a certain degree, during the process.
Yeah.
Which is also part of the storytelling and the journey and, all of what in the end makes it really special for the client. So it's also putting that personal imprint on the project in the background that, that becomes as important to the client as it does to the decorator.
Right. It gives them something that nobody else has, which is so hard to find these days. That's pretty special. All right. We're going to answer 2 more quick questions and then we're going to go into your slides. Are there any other paint companies that you love besides Pharaoh and Ball?
Well, I would say we use all of them. I love fine European paints. You get, particularly in some of their higher gloss, you get a beautiful kind of hard surface from them. But, it runs the gamut. So, we use Benjamin Moore all the time. We use all the usual suspects, to be honest. And
who do you get to hang a paperback fabric? Is it a wallpaper hanger?
Yeah, our good wallpaper hangers can all do that.
And just so you guys know, Schumacher will paperback any of our fabrics for you, so you don't have to go through the hassle of doing it yourselves. We provide that service.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. All right. So Annie, let's launch into Brian's incredible slides. You guys are in for a treat. All right.
Okay.
So you want to just walk us through?
This is a project. Yeah, this is a project in Palm Beach, and this presented a unique challenge in that, and it's glorious architecturally, this house. This room is 30 feet square with 22-foot high ceilings.
Wow.
And so, you know, you have these huge planes of walls. And I worked from the idea of a Cuba cloth and developed this pattern for the walls, which is a bit hard to see here, but it's in Venetian plaster, but it's three-dimensional. But what the purpose of it was really to give the room some scale, to draw it in, to create a frame for all the art and the decoration to sit against. So there was a real specific process of, you know, arriving at you know, the end result here, so which I love.
It's subtle, but it's impactful at the same time.
Yeah, and you've got some rather nice art.
I'll say. Okay, tell us about this one.
So here, I mean, when I came in here, it was just a paneled room. And I had the idea of Miriam Elner, who is kind of the quintessential grandmaster of Église, Verre Église. So we did this thin, watery glass, and the technique that she used on the back of it, it feels like a Tahitian pearl. So it really just gives this beautiful shimmery surface, which is beautiful with anything.
Oh, it's so
now, in this, yeah, so that was one thing. This was Mariguet. This is the company in Paris that I was referencing before. And this is moon gold on glass. So it's also a form of église, which, you know, creates this kind of square pattern effect and gives it this very warm light.
Oh, that's so incredible. Can we go back one slide in? Is that a steer that's been pieced?
Sorry?
Is that rug a steer hide rug that's been pieced?
It is, yes.
Wow,
yes.
So cool. Okay.
Yes, in a compass pattern.
Really cool. Okay, wow, beautiful.
So yeah, this room is a combination of Venetian plaster. This is going into a ladies' powder room, and it's an artist here in New York.
Whoops. Brian, we lost you.
Whoops. Yeah, sorry. My phone rang. Sorry, that I didn't mean to do that. So this is a combination of a marquetry of mother of pearl and abalone, and then stenciling in moon gold, you know, creating this landscape in this room. So you know, this was just a wonderful opportunity to work with this artist, you know, to do this, and it's really beautiful. I think I love it.
I don't understand the mother of pearl and abalone. Where does that factor in? Is it
so? Yeah, if you look at the balustrade, the sort of railing at the bottom of the room, yes, that's all in mother of pearl. And then you'll see these fruits up in the trees. You'll see them on the back wall. Oh, those are mother of pearl. The shadow around the railing is all in abalone. So you get this kind of oily gray, you know, sort of peacocky, you know, beautiful contrast of very subtle color.
So are they inset, or are they just part of the Venetian plaster?
They're inset into the Venetian plaster.
I see. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and Laura Bergman is the name of the artist who did that, FYI.
Gorgeous. What is this cool thing?
So this is Nancy Lorenz, who's based in Long Island City. And this is for a powder room that we're doing for clients in New York. So this bathroom is all the rails and stiles in it are in marble, and all the inset panels are in this, which is this. She has this wonderful background in Japanese arts and her techniques. So this is silver leafed. You see the craquelé. Mm-hmm. And then it's all inlaid, also mother of pearl and abalone, but she puts color behind the mother of pearl. So that's what's imbuing it with this, you know, variety of color that you see.
Wow.
So this is also creating this other form of landscape, which is extraordinary. She's amazing.
So that's like a 6 by 8 inch sample, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then this shows you it rendered into the actual elevations. So you get this 3D of the space.
That is stunning.
So this is in construction right now.
Wow. At what point does she come in? Does she come in at the end?
No, this is all done in her workshop. So all the panels are done separately.
I see.
And then it's just part of the installation of the stone. You know, they're the last thing to be installed.
That is just incredible. Okay.
This is an apartment in New York, and this actually was originally a library, and the way the apartment was reconfigured, this became the master bedroom. And it was a wood paneled room, but there was a door where the bed stands. There was a big door that took you into the living room. And so in closing that up, we came up with another idea, which is a decorative finish to resemble wood, but textured so that it looks like a wire brushed Cerussed oak.
Wow,
And,
so that's not real paneling.
Well, it's real paneling, but the finish on it was done really to resemble. Yeah.
Fabulous. That is so.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And this is an artist, Mark Giglio, who we work with on every project. And Mark is an angel to work with. He's just one of the nicest people of all time.
That is the chicest thing.
Also Mark Giglio. This is based on an ikat pattern. The walls are Venetian plaster, but the same thing, it's stenciled. So you get texture to the surface. I don't know if there's a detail of this, but you can see it takes on a bit more of a painterly quality when you get up to it. Obviously, it's a client that loves blue. Mm-hmm. And then we have this series of Joseph Albert prints. So, you know, you get this wonderful strong color. So, you know, here's an example too of the background really becoming the art in the room. And that art that you see on that back wall is the only art in the room.
Right. It almost looks like velvet. Does it look like a velvet up close, like when you're in the room?
No, because it's the Venetian plaster. So you get this nice kind of waxy, pearlized quality to the surface of it. Yeah, it's very soft.
Dimension. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. Then this living room. So this was an example of, I wanted to create a background that was going to be more architectural. So we did this series of horizontal bands that are three-dimensional in plaster. And then this room was really very monochromatic, the color moment really being in the curtains. So the curtains really create a frame, you know, for the banding, you know, of the walls, and then obviously all of the art and decoration placed up against that.
It looks like there's an interesting ceiling in there too.
Yeah, you've got this wonderful, very flat paneled coffered ceiling. Gorgeous. So it gives you a good repeat and gives you a great sense of scale within the room. This library, the inspiration for it was a Roman library in a house in Paris. And this was a finish in this wonderful sort of faux bois, but in a series of squares. It's kind of a driftwood gray. This is also Mark Giglio. This is probably will remain one of my favorite finishes of all time. I mean, when this room got done, it was just heaven for me. It's so unusual. And the combination of the finish with the paneling of the room, this was a house designed by Randy Carell of Robert Stern Architects. Mm-hmm. You know, just a great collaboration.
That's fantastic.
Again, you can see, sorry, in this room, the drawing, you know, or the decorative painting, so to speak, and the way it was sort of done in this marquetry pattern, you know, really other than the piece hanging above the sofa, does not require art. So, you know, here again is the argument for, you know, the finishes really can become the artistic element of the room.
Mm-hmm. And do you ever repeat your backgrounds?
No, I mean, this I would not repeat in the same way. No, mm-hmm. It would always be, I mean, it might be reinterpreted, but it's not going to be repeated. And of course, you know what, architecturally, you're not going to repeat this. So the experience would always be entirely different.
Yeah, yeah. So pretty.
A master bedroom where we have very high ceilings, and it's a big barrel vaulted ceiling in here, and it has huge windows with, you know, big open expansive views. And I wanted something that was going to give it lightness, softness and movement, and you get this beautiful shadow. It's also in Venetian plaster, but it's almost like an oyster shell matte finish to the wall. So it's not very reflective, and it's really just to catch the light to give you the pattern.
So how long would it take for a Venetian, you know, like a large Venetian plaster room to be installed?
Excuse me.
The wall finish itself.
This, I would say this was probably 3 weeks.
Okay.
Because it's a series of stencils that it has to get laid up and then built up, and then it gets polished, and there's a whole process that goes into it.
Stunning.
This is a project in Switzerland that this was in during installation in December. We got special permission from the Swiss consulate to go to this house, which we've been working on this project for 10 years. And in this room, it's quite a combination of different finishes. But the beginning is the backgrounds. The walls are all these wonderful engraved, painted, and gilded Russian folk tales, which you can see here a little bit better. All the bronze railing and all the light fixtures. It was a big commission with Claude Lalonde. So this has been really a dream come true. We did this fantastic ceiling that's based on more of a sort of secessionist kind of star pattern, you know, for the chandelier to sit up against. So the walls, it's oak paneling, it's all wire brushed, so you get this wonderful texture to the surface. There's a tremendous complexity to all the parts that went into this.
You are so lucky that you get to express your vision, you know, I mean, that you have, I mean, it's not just luck, it's talent and hard work. I mean, I know it didn't just happen to you, but like that you have the ability to express this is so unusual. I know you know that. It's just beyond.
Yeah, I don't take it for granted. I can tell you, I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
I work at seducing my clients into accepting, making this kind of a commitment to getting these great finishes. That's a panel. This is one of the panels. And this panel, just to give you a sense of scale, is about 6 feet by 7 feet. So it's not full scale, but it's 3/4 scale, you know, to the human.
Wow. I'm blown away.
Then this is a dining room in a house that we did for clients, very neoclassical. This is, it's a form of église, but it's a technique that was done for Marie Antoinette in one of her houses. And the painting is actually done on the mirror as opposed to being on the reverse of the mirror. So you really get the texture of the paint on the glass, and it's just beautiful. I mean, absolutely beautiful. I love all the shades of blue in this. This is one of my favorite dining rooms that we've done.
Beautiful.
This is an apartment in New York, and this was based on a series of Rateau panels in carved plaster. You know, again, here's the argument of the walls are the art. There is no art in this room. So that was the justification and the expense involved in doing this. And it is a dream of a dining room, absolute dream.
Yeah,
I love
and
this
it's actually quite simple. You know, there's not a lot in that room.
Yep. Very deliberate with no carpet. The use of mirror, which I love. It's very 18th century. It expands on the space. This is a watery mirror, so you get this kind of abstracted, reflective quality that gives it a bit of a mystery, which I think makes it feel a bit more modern and just very sexy.
Sure is.
This is a house in Bridgehampton. Again, you know, the client was not going to invest heavily in art. So we were inspired by the house in Normandy of Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Berger, where they did the water lilies. So this was another artist that we commissioned to do the water lilies on the wall, and then commissioned an artist to do the dining room table, Bill Sullivan, which is in plaster. So it was a whole nother sort of storytelling, you know, that went on in for this particular client. Very different.
Cool. That I remember we published in Veranda.
Right, exactly. This is a client in New York, big art collectors, but this was going to be the one room where art wasn't really an important component. They have some Matisse drawings, and they're really modern art collectors more than contemporary, although they have contemporary. But one of the things that I love are Cézannes, and Matisse was a big collector of Cézannes. So I had bought a late 19th century Cézanne, very much the kind of thing that Matisse would have collected. Again, Mark Giglio, we developed this pattern repeat, and it's done in Venetian plaster, stenciled. So it also has this three-dimensionality to it, and you have matte and you have polished. And it is absolutely beautiful. I love this.
Unusual. It's so cool.
Yeah. There's a detail of it. Yeah.
Wow, so pretty. I didn't know Matisse collected Cézannes.
Yes.
Cool.
This is a bedroom out in Los Angeles for clients. It's an artist by the name of Pierre Paulin, who does these beautiful hand-painted, I mean, he'll do anything, but in this case, we wanted to create this panelization. So it's almost Christian Berard inspired. Where you get this kind of classicism of the paneled room, but you get the lightness of the drawing and a little bit more of the shape. Everything in this room really became about silhouettes, with the valance on the curtains, the shaping of that, the shell shape of the headboard, and this is another example too of a floor. It's a painted floor, which Paulin did, which is in a diamond pattern, very simple.
And subtle. I didn't even notice that at first. And that was probably just a white box before you got your hands on it, right?
Yes, this was all new construction, another Robert Stern house.
Wow.
That we did for these clients.
Okay.
Oh, this was a pride and joy of last September. Casman Gallery asked me to curate the show of Claude and Francois Lalande. It's the first Les Lalande show that's been done in the US since they died. And I wanted to really make it a very personal experience. We're so used to seeing Lalande exhibited in these white backgrounds. And they lived, when you went to their house and their workshop, everything, it was really, it's a farmhouse in a small village, all behind garden walls. So to me, there was a real liveliness to the way they lived and this kind of surrealist quality. So I wanted to create this forest background for all the pieces to sit within. And so we did the drawing for this, and they outsourced this great company that came in and stenciled it. This was done in one day, this enormous room.
Wow.
And so, everything was to, create a background so you get the silhouette of the pieces against it. And it was really a very beautiful exhibition.
So beautiful. So am I reading it correctly? Is some of it flat and some of it glossy?
All flat.
All flat.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, there was the background is matte. The sort of background paler green is matte, and then all the trees are done in a satin and a semi. So you do get this little bit of undulation in the surface of the paint.
So chic. I think that might be our last slide.
And I want to do more exhibits for galleries too. I loved doing that. Absolutely loved doing that.
Well, you collect personally, Lalande, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when we shot your apartment, you had that alligator. I think it was an alligator.
The crocodile consoles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So
my first Lalande that I bought probably 15 years ago, begged, borrowed, and stealed, and I paid nothing at the time. So that would be another message to everybody watching this. Beg, borrow, and steal, and get the art that you want because you'll live with it and you'll love it forever. And I would say the same thing about the backgrounds. I mean, the backgrounds, you get it right. Even if you're going to move art around, you're generally probably going to have art where you're placing it. So things can move over time. And that really changes not only the experience of the interaction with the backgrounds, but the room itself and the way you see art. And even if it's just moving art that you already have, it takes on new life.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to inspire me. All right, I have a few more questions for you, and then we're going to answer some more questions from the audience. So is there a project that you haven't done that you're itching to do? I mean, you said galleries, anything else?
Well, I've always wanted to do a garden design. And in fact, the first book that I was in, The Decorator, which was back in the mid 80s, that's the thing that I said then that I wanted to do. I still want to do it. I've done it for myself on a very modest scale, but I would love to have the opportunity to really work with landscape. I love gardens. I'm passionate about gardens. And, you know, even that's something for everybody to think about is what you look through to, whether it be in New York City, whether it be in a house looking out to a garden, that also enters into the way I think about color and surface and finish and pattern.
Yeah, I always say, you know, we had a great apartment on 89th Street. You were probably.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it had a nice light, but terrible views. And I always would say that I would almost rather live in a not so nice apartment with great views than a great apartment with not so great views. But
no, because then you make such great backgrounds. You're not looking out of the apartment, you're looking in.
Out. I guess that's true. All right, well, I've got to hire you. That's all there is to it. All right, so besides Albert Hadley, who are some of your design heroes?
Well, Henri Samuel. I mean, I was going to say Albert too, of course, because Albert was my mentor and he was a genius. But Henri Samuel has always, and still to me, is as fresh today as he was 30 years ago for me. The way he introduced contemporary art and furniture, you know, he really kind of led the charge for me in the sense that he worked the classicism of the 18th and 19th century in with the 20th century. And so that has always resonated with me for my work and what I do today, and all the artists that we work with. But you know, the other one that I really think about too, because it's about form, is Frank Gehry. And I love how he reshaped architecture today. Yeah. And where that's led to and inspired so many other people. You know, the form, the materials, the shape, it's just been fascinating watching him. There's an amazing documentary. Now I'm going to draw a total blank on who produced it, who was an actor and great friend of Frank Gehry's. But there's part of it which talks about the model making of the buildings and the way they would do them out of cardboard. And they have a whole camera system that goes within the forms, which is the beginning of the engineering of the actual structure itself. Wow. It's fascinating.
That's cool. I think your responses are really interesting because they're so different.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And how about favorite historic houses?
Well, house it's not. I love the Doge's Palace in Venice. Mm-hmm. Is one of my favorites. There are so many houses. It's hard to put a point on what would be a favorite. You know, Chatsworth in England. Well, I have to say any of the great English houses, Sissinghurst, you know, which is the polar opposite of Chatsworth, which is also so much about the garden experience. You know, it's endless, and it's where I get lost in all my books too, which inspire me. Drottningholm, which is the summer palace outside Stockholm.
Yeah, I've been there.
You know, which is absolutely beautiful, beyond beautiful, because it's this grand sort of neoclassical palace, but it's because they didn't have the resources to do everything in stone or marble. It's, you know, it's faux marble. It's sort of this grand idea that's beautifully painted, that takes on this much softer quality than a Versailles. So, you know, again, I draw from so many different resources. The Villa Necchi in Milan, mm-hmm. You know, which is just, you know, awe-inspiring, I think, for so many different reasons.
Right. Unless you get trapped there. I got trapped. I was on a private tour and they wouldn't let me leave. I almost missed my flight.
Oh dear.
Yeah, but it's incredible. It's incredible. All right. Well, let's open. You have there are 7 questions, so let's get to it.
Okay.
How do you decide to use mirrored walls?
It depends on the space, what you're looking to, whether it's because you want to reflect something. Is it that you want to just capture light? You know, I would go back again to the idea of the watery mirror, which can become a wonderful foil. A lot of people don't like mirror, or they don't want to see themselves. So how do you incorporate it for that reason? I'm a mirror freak. I'm a glass freak. So anywhere I can incorporate mirror, I do. I've never met mirror that I don't like. Let's just put it that way.
Great answer. What exactly is Venetian plaster? How is it produced?
Well, Venetian plaster is, as it says, it's a plaster composite. And it's the techniques that we do are applied in layers. It's really troweled on, and then it's taken back with a blade, which is what controls the level of polish and sheen that you can get on it. So there are many ways of doing it, including, as I was describing before, stenciled in Venetian plaster, you know, creating that three-dimensionality. You can have texture to the surface. There are a multitude of different ways that you can translate in Venetian plaster.
Okay. Is there any material or finish that you would not suggest for the walls?
I've never met one that, I mean, there, you know, certainly, you know, for instance, we did a yacht project, and there, you know, there were certain things that the shipyard, that FedShip was going to steer you away from for obvious reasons, you know, whether it be being at sea, whether it be vibration and movement. But, you know, again, I think it's a question of what's appropriate, what makes sense, what is cost effective, if that's a concern. No, I mean, I did a 3-story stair hall in gouged mica panels.
Oh my
that
God.
is heaven. Oh, so yeah, no, I mean, there's no end to what you can dream up.
That's cool. All right, I would never want to leave your project finished. What a range, Brian. Bravo. Perfect for a snowy day. Thank you. Your historical eye is a treasure. So nice. You mentioned Pharaoh and ball pointing white for use for trim. Would you say it's bad to use the Pharaoh and ball pointing white with a more cost-effective paint on the walls?
No, not at all. Absolutely not at all. I mean, I've done the Pharaoh and ball. In fact, even in my office, I have the Pharaoh and ball for the trim, and then it's a Benjamin Moore linen white on the walls. So then you get this beautiful soft sheen of the satin finish of the Pharaoh and ball on the trim. And you get I mean, in this case, it's an eggshell finish on the wall. So you get this beautiful, subtle transition between wall and trim. Super elegant. And it doesn't just have to be Pharaoh and ball. I mean, you could do a beautiful satin finish in any other more affordable, because, you know, let's face it, Pharaoh and ball, beautiful. It's not for everybody because it's not inexpensive paint. Right.
Okay. What's the name of the Stockholm Palace again?
Drottningholm, which is D-R-O, I think it's T-T-I-N-G-H-O-L-M, but do spell check on that one, but it'll pop right up. It has the first opera house, private opera house on the grounds there, and it's all lit by candles. I'm amazed that it didn't burn down at some point in the last 250 years. It's heaven on earth. And it's famous for the Chinese pavilion at Drottningholm, which, for anybody that loves Chinese Chippendale or the sort of chinoiserie, it's divine. That and Sanssouci, the Chinese pavilion at Sanssouci in Potsdam, unbelievable German Rococo, fabulous, heaven. And that whole park at Sanssouci. Sorry, I'm getting off topic here, but
no, it's awesome.
I mean,
you're welcome.
talk about finishes, talk about crazy. I mean, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
You're going to inspire us all. I can't wait to travel again. Okay, here are a few more. Ben Moore has a great oil finish quality too. Do you agree?
Yes, 100%. Again, it really, I'll tell you what, for me, it comes down to the care in the brushing out. That's it. You can get a gorgeous finish in just a beautiful brushing out.
Okay. How do you feel the finishes and dimensional backgrounds affect the acoustical aspects of your spaces? And also the use of textile finishes like padded fabric on the background.
Yeah, well, that's a good question because, you know, obviously acoustically, you know, clearly you don't want to be in a dining room that's very sound reflective. So whether you're hiring an acoustician to come in that's going to be, you know, providing something within the walls to help quiet it. We do a lot of upholstered walls, you know, but even just fab backing fabric, because it's not going to be as reflective, makes a difference. Floor coverings make a difference. And, you know, I think upholstered walls can also be very expensive. So that's another question to the client. You know, are you prepared to invest in the expense of doing that versus, you know, just applying fabric to walls? But, you know, that's all beautiful, different ways of accomplishing very special backgrounds.
We got a nice comment from our friend Carl DeQuino. Breathtaking, elegant work, such innovation, such invention, all inspiring. It's nice. Thanks,
Love Carl.
I know, me too. Another great designer.
Yes.
What do you think of strié like Bunny Mellon's house? Still appropriate?
Yeah, I think it can be. You know, I have to say I'm maybe a little bit jaded on a strié finish from my Parrish Hadley days. So it's something that I do steer away from, but that's just my own mishigas. You know, it's like, you know, that car that you knew from the 90s that conjures up an image. I get, it's a more old-fashioned image for me. So, you know, I tend to do things that while they might be traditional, I try to update the technique so that it has a real freshness to it. Which is not to say that a strié would not be fresh and beautiful. So I don't mean to say that at all.
Okay. What is the best paint to use for a lacquered finish on a wall? And would you use the same paint on furniture?
You know, that's going to depend. I wouldn't know what the best paint would be per se, but to get a really good lacquer finish, it's really building up many coats on the surface. So that also brings you back to typically when you're doing a high gloss finish, you're doing a wet sanding technique in between the layers, which gives it that very soft, smooth surface in the finish, so that it eliminates any static and any, you know, dust, you know, that you might get in that finish, which in just a brushed out finish, you're not going to pick up on. But when you're doing a highly, you know, polished or lacquered surface, you know, it really picks up those imperfections.
All right, two more questions, one from the audience and one from me. What would you likely recommend for a very narrow hallway and a small bungalow with no natural light and lots of mechanicals on the ceiling?
Well, you could go a number of different ways. You could, I mean, let me just start by saying, I don't find dark walls make a space feel necessarily enclosed. That also might play into, you know, are you hanging art? Is it going to be salon style? Are you creating an interest to the background in that narrow hall with no light, with something other than just relying on the color? If you're trying to make the pipes or whatever it is in the ceiling disappear, I've done things with dark finishes where it all just becomes kind of a shadow and makes it interesting, or just the ceiling behind, and then whatever that mechanical is in the ceiling becomes a pattern against whatever that color of the ceiling is. So there are a lot of different ways of looking at it.
Someone wants you to launch your own signature brand palette of colors. So
I can't imagine who that is.
That's your second project. All right. So my last question, finish this sentence, please. When a project is completed, it's a success to you if
it reflects my clients, if the story that it tells is not about me, but about the family that I'm doing it for. That is the most important thing at the end of the day for me, because I always, anybody that's heard me talk always hears me talk about the scrapbook. And the scrapbook for me is the storytelling at the end of the project. It's the process getting there. It's all the things that make it home for a couple or a family. I mean, for me, that's it at the end.
That's cool. Well, Brian, you're very special and your work is just beyond. Can't thank you enough for joining today. Really.
Thank you for asking me.
Really fun. I learned so much. All
Thank
right.
you
Thanks,
for having me.
Of course. Thanks everyone for joining. Okay. Bye, Brian.
Bye.